morning, everyone. First, I would like to thank Dr. Mangal and Dr. S.G. Gupta, chairman of the group, for providing me an opportunity to share my learning about population growth and dynamics. I know in this group, there are many trained demographers across all campuses in Delhi, Jaipur, and Bangalore. And in addition, we have a practicing demographer, those who do not have a formal training or a degree in demography, but for more than decades they are practicing in demography in the domain of public health. So sir, I request all of you, please bear with me if you find repetitive or if you do not find any much interesting knowledge on you, but still I see a lot of scope that we have a young faculty and very intelligent faculty in our group, and some of them senior people, those who have really proven their knowledge and experience in other area, and now they are contributing in the field of public health. So they might find useful my presentation. So this is just brief out. It's nothing but this is just my sharing of my knowledge in demography. So I just begin with the contents which I'm going to speak about. Often people speak about demography and population study. So some people really want to know the clarification. Is it the same or is it different? If it is the same, then why do we often call demography and sometimes we call population study? And then the topic which is given to me is the population growth. So also I'm going to speak about the change in population size and the population growth, how it affects, and what are the factors which influence this population growth. And then there are some very important population theories which is used to explain this population growth through the demographic transition. And the demographic transition is very important, is a hypothetical kind of a cohort in which it is assumed that every country has to pass through. And then there is a time which is called the window of opportunity, when every country has an advantages of working population growth. And how do we convert into dividend? I'm going to speak about this. And then of course the demographers, if they don't use the data, they don't feel comfortable. So I'm going to give you some paradox, population paradox, some numbers, especially in terms of equity and inequality. This is what is existing in our country. And then the larger interest, demographic implication in public health. Basically, how do we use this knowledge in managing the program, population program? And then how do we contribute in population policy research and for evaluating any population program? And then one of the important things which the demographer mostly they use it, conducting SITAN, situation analysis, and managing data, which includes generating new data, compiling, and then analyzing the available data on the topic of our interest. This is what I'm going to speak today. Please, if you find something to be answered, please you can stop me there. But I request you, if you can note it down, and in the end, if we can have a discussion. But if there is some technical problem, something not able to listen, immediately you stop there. I think Dr. Mangal will definitely do that. So let me come back. What is demography? Now the term demography is derived from the Greek word that is demo, meaning the human being. First time, a Belgian statistician A. Gouliard in 1855 coined this word. So demography is demo and graphy. So scientific study of human population. And then what is demography? Basically, this is a scientific study of population change in terms of its size. That is the total size of population, structure, composition, and development. This is a refined definition which was derived by the group of demographers in IIHMR dictionary in 1982. So then what is population study? Now, population study is nothing but also the extension of demography with a wider definition. So here in population studies, what we do, it not only deals with the changes in the level and the size and composition distribution, but also what are the causes, what is the consequences of this change in development of the human population. So here the subject is a bit horizon. So the multidisciplinary approach is addressed to study this change. So any discipline which has linked with the population is bringing to further study what is the consequences change. This is what defined in one of the famous demographers, sometimes we call it father of demography also, Vogue, 1958. I remember when I used to have a lot of interaction with Dr. S.G. Gupta when I joined as assistant professor in this group way back in 1995. I was, very energetic and always talking technical, but very little having experience of practicing demography. So he used to tell us, that time I couldn't understand what he's saying, but now I can understand. He used to say, you demographers are trained to confuse people. And especially we used to have a lot of discussion on fertility. And he has a different definition of fertility. By now I realize what he was meaning. And that's true. In IIPS we have a two set of demographers, those who really choose their career. One is a technical demographer where we just deals with the number. We calculate the rate, we calculate all numbers, we calculate proportion, we calculate secondary, we develop a model. But without understanding the real insight of those numbers. So he used to tell me, you are a point demographer, always speak in proportion. And human, you say the human population, and you speak fertility 2.1. What is 0.1? So we have to go beyond. And there is another set of demographer who's chosen, that is substantive demography, which is taught in. They are really the larger group, have the knowledge of different disciplines and apply in demography and try to give the answer. What is the cause and consequences? So basically, Warren S. Thompson in 1936 came up with three set of questions. The three lines we brought it. They say, if you need to answer of these three questions, probably that has become the population study. So what he spoke about it, what are the changes in terms of absolute total population sizes or the structure. Now, when I say the structure, meaning when I study the population across different age. So when we study the change in the population, what is the total population? But even I'm interested to study the change in population, the different age group, that is structure. When I study the structure with the sex, that is a male or female, or any social group, then it has become the composition. So here, what are the changes that are taking place in the size of population, and how, there is a what and here's how are these changes brought about? What is the significance of these changes from perspective of human welfare? That is more important. You just give me the number, this much of it's gone down, this much of population gone up. Fine, good enough. What's big deal? The big deal is, what is the significance of in terms of human welfare? And then where the population, where the people found, which area, and what are the changes taking place in their distribution in communities. This is what is a very important, the particular community when we call about. So here we are talking about the equity and inequality issues. What kind of, and what kind of people are found in given population group, and how do those in group, one group differs from another group. So these are the three important lines. Then after Second World War, using this lens, the scope of demography is gone like anything, because we started using these numbers in planning, in even developing population policies, and even managing the population program. Now, I'm straightway coming to the measuring. How do we measure the change? When I say the absolute population change, so at given point of time of any population, it is influenced by only three processes. So any the population of given point of time is influenced by birth. So birth is a positive, or the death. When the people die and they move out from the population, and the third factor is the migration. Nowadays, this migration is coming. So when we talk about the population growth, only the two factors, the biological two factors, that the birth and death, were determined. So that's why we have a lot of policies where we talk about initial time before Second World War. Let us reduce the fertility and death. Of course, everybody agree, but bringing down the birth, the fertility was a real cause. But now the migration is becoming nowadays is a becoming very important issue, especially in determining the urbanization. So these are the three processes. Two are the biological processes, and migration is the non-biological process. It is very important for us to understand. Now, how do we measure? So there is a population balancing equation. So here, what we do, it is decide. Please bear with me. I'm going to use a little bit of mathematics just to tell. So here's the formula is PT. So we are studying the population change between time, initial time, which we denote by 0, and then the time at present time t. So what is the population? So between this duration, during this time, how? So this is the natural increase, birth and death, and then the net migration. This is how it has been decided. So I think Dr. Gupta has come. So I feel very motivated is my method, and a lot of discussion we do have. Now this is what I try to same the derivation, population balancing equation, and thanks to our IT department, they have given now new model technology where I was using this then and there, and PPT you can write. We use as a slate like a blackboard and that. So what you do in this population balancing equation? So the difference in population size across two time, and when I divide by the base population, this is what change the data, the rate. So this is three factors which is emerging here: fertility, mortality, and migration. Here I have taken example. Suppose if I take the base year, last two census, so 2001 and 2011. So the absolute change in population across these two census is governed by only the natural increase and plus migration. If it is a country, then natural increase is a big deal. But within a country, the migration, the process of moving one people from one state to another. So that also, that's why you see the population of Delhi or metros, the major contribution in Delhi is not a natural increase. It is the migration between two census. This is what I want to tell you. Now, this is what the one exercise I'm sharing with you. Now, this exercise I did when my mentor Dr. K. Srinivasan used to teach us. I was teaching with them in our institute also for MPH program, and where some of my colleagues also got MPH degree with the Johns Hopkins and also Cornell. So here, if you see how the migration and the natural increase has a contribution to the population. Here, I have taken an example of Kerala. So if you see the Kerala population of growth, so what happened from 1911 onward? If you see the growth is fluctuating, but after independence, so in 1951, 1961, after the independence, again there was a settlement, so you can find some growth in population, but the migration was here is a negative. So it was the out migration was there. So the migration process also very important, especially if you see over the period of time 1960 onward, the growth rate of Kerala is declining, and this growth rate, the contribution of natural increase also there, but the migration also played a big role in it. Yeah. So this is I just want an example. Now, as a demographer, I mentioned, if I don't play with the data, I don't feel comfortable. So I'm just giving you a scenario of population growth in the country. Now, this is just to sensitize you how the population growth is a very important to determine the total population size in the world. So this is the scenario of, if you see 18,000, before BC 80,000, that was the first billion was observed of the global population. And just double it, the add of second billion mark was observed in, it took 130 years and observed in 1930. It means that time the growth rate was little 0.5, 0.56 something. So that's why we talk like the rule of 70, which we are using in epidemiology also. Now, the growth rate is very important. Higher the growth rate, it will take less time to double, and the population gets increasing. So you observe the third billion mark was observed in 1960, and it took only 30 years. And then the fourth, it took only 15 years. And then fifth and sixth, it took 17. And the seventh billion mark, just within 14 years, and it was observed way back in 2013. And after beyond that, there's a projection data, and we're expecting that after 8th billion, when we observe, we are going to supposed to observe in 2037. Then this is the time when the world population growth again will start declining, declining further, and the 9th billion will take 21 years instead of only 14 years. So population growth is a very, very important. Similar graph I projected. So if you here see a historical perspective, if you see the until the 1800 BC, the 1 billion, how many years it took to observe 1 billion? But just addition of another billion, it took not much time. So the growth rate is very important. And then I'm going to tell how this growth rate is also very important for economic development and welfare, where I was giving the. Now this is another presentation. Here what I have done, some of the people when I teach in the class, and some of the senior person also, they used to say that when you are saying the population growth is declining, but still absolute population is increasing. So you are contradicting your statement. I said, no, I'm not contradicting. You need to understand. There are certain concepts, because we say there is a certain concept of science. That is, we call it population inertia, population momentum, and this is what's very important. So even the population growth, what today we have, and today onward we start declining, doesn't mean that absolute population will go down. Its absolute population size will not go down because of the inertia. So this is what the exact graph I'm showing here. Although if you see the blue line, the population growth rate is going down in the world, and that still the absolute increase is sizable. And after some time, 1995 to 2001, the absolute increase, net addition, is also bringing down, but it got stagnated. It is not going down as the growth rate is going down. This is what simple concept I want to give you. Now, this is what, if you see, I thought let me also compare with the China and India. If you see 1950, the China and India, the total world population 50, that was the mark of around 2 billion. We were very close. And then gradually, if you see 2011, and then it's expected that the population by 2040 something, the India will overcome the China and something. Even the growth rate is not that much. Now here I try to just compare 1.2. This is I taken 2011 census. That time our population was 1 billion. So 1.2 billion versus 7 billion. So in India we have a many countries. So this is what the very pickle scenario. And to just sensitize you, India, the state, we have a different state. So this is what the very different, very inequity distribution, unequal distribution, big challenge. So many countries we involve, like the Uttar Pradesh population is equivalent to, I think, more than even Brazil, and then the Maharashtra, New Mexico, Bihar, you can have more than in Germany, that sort of. So this is what, just to sensitize you. So I'm coming back on point, how this population and what are the factors which influence. So I said there's the three factors, the two biological factors, fertility and mortality. And when I say the fertility is very complex. So to measure a fertility is not a small thing. It depends. It is a probability. It's a monthly probability. But in fact, fertility, when we measure, we say it is nothing but that the fertility number of live children to a woman, which reflect as a reproductive process of the women. So number of live children, this is very, and it is determined by the various social, cultural, economic factors. And then mortality, when we see, it is also the biological factor. Mortality refers to the occurrence of death in a population. So this also influenced by several factors. Now, here over a period of time, we have seen that the mortality is also very important, especially with the public health experts, that if you have to study the population, the standard of living and other, and this all because happened within no time because of the advancement in medicine and then advancement in public health and science. And especially the low income country got a very higher advantage than the high income countries. And the migration, as I mentioned, now the migration has become a very important after. Now migration plays a very important role for overall development of any country. And this is what we face in COVID-19. We are facing that migration, how it is played a very important role in that. So migration refers to this is so how the person moved from place of origin to place of destination. So the movement of the people from over a period of time. But when we talk about major migration, so especially we exclude the short-term or temporary movements such as commuting work, visiting friends. All I think you know that I should not tell you. Here I'm going to speak about the concept. This is what is very important. So if you have to study the model of fertility change, you can study. So there is a many social scientists, especially coming from the different approach, different background, and studying for the human population. Then they just did a framework. They developed a framework together, and they say that there are the numerous factors which are in nature of socioeconomic, culture, and others. They do not directly affect the fertility, but they affect through the proximate determinants. Now, these proximate determinants affect the fertility. So then social factor means how the education has an effect on fertility, income, and the work status women, how the culture, marriage practices, nuptiality pattern, and then the postpartum and the religious beliefs, and then the comorbidity kind of situation. And of course, the political will, political governance policies also factor. And then of course, the contraceptive, that is availability and the quality of services, especially for the contraceptive, that's also factor fertility. Now what happened, Davis and Briggs, they were the two great scientists, the demographer. In 1956, they introduced the concept of proximate determinant. And they identify out, I think, around 11 variables which affect the fertility. Later on, the similar framework was used by the Bongard in 1982, and Bongard analyzed those indicators, and he suggests only 7 indicators. He said if you have an information of 7 indicators, so these all indicators, all factors which influence the fertility. So if he said if you have a 7 indicator, more than 95% of the variability in the fertility, controlling fertility can be done. So you can really design a program in a nice manner. Now, Bongard come up with the 7, as I mentioned, proportion of women in sexual union, meaning the age at marriage is straightforward in Indian countries where the legitimate births are only. And the use of contraception, that's very important. Here, we talk about the unmet need of family planning method. And then postpartum amenorrhea, there is the infertility. That is the practice of breastfeeding. If you do the best practice of breastfeeding after delivery, then it influences the infertility period. And then the induced abortion. These are the 4 factors which is easy to measure. There are other factors also with it. Now, frequency of intercourse is very important because I mentioned that the fertility is a product of many. It is a monthly probability of conception. It depends on so many things. Very difficult. But if you have a frequency of intercourse, you can really develop a very good, but it's very difficult. Spontaneous, this is nothing but the fetal wastage, miscarriages. Sterility due to. So the Bongard, they say, they develop, they come up that if you really want to control or govern the fertility, just focus on these 4 indicators, proportion. That is the age at marriage, you raise age at marriage, play. Age at marriage is nothing but you are playing with the exposure of consumption during reproductive time, because the reproductive period 15 to 49, if you increase the age at marriage, so it lessens the exposure. And of course, the use of contraception, especially use of contraception in the developing countries like India, where there is a lot of unmet need. People really, they don't want to have any pregnancy, but still they don't use it contraception. So you have to identify such people and provide with the quality and choice of services as well. And then India, and many like the Sri Lanka and Kerala, with the intervention only one, that is the raising increase age at marriage, they were able to bring down 1/3 of their fertility within no time. Now, then there is a many, the population theories came up, Malthus theories or the poverty theories is very important. They say, like the population trying to increase dramatic or now exponential fashion, but he mentioned dramatical now to grows in exponential fashion, and then food or the means of livelihood in arithmetic, then how it will be taken care. It doesn't work. Don't worry. There is a population. There is a positive chat. There is a natural chat, which really keep. This is what, and we also consider, I think, like a COVID kind of pandemic kind of situations. But now it is not that so much. For earlier when the pandemic took place, a lot of people used cholera and all. So these are the positive chats which keep the balance between the population growth and the means of survival. Now, then another important population growth. This is the topic given to me, so I have to speak about the demographic transition. Nortiston and Davis, 1950, they have presented a habited kind of situation that every country has to pass through the demographic transition, and here they try to do it. How the population is growing, and what are the causes taking place, what is the consequences, and what is the issues linked with the development. So here they try to do. So what he said, Nortiston and Davis, he said that when we enter, so there is a fertility or mortality. He said, I'm not taking care of migration, only 2 biological factors he has taken off, because he said these 2 biological factors are influenced by socio-economic factors. So these are a few studies, and then the theories I will pick. This is what just gives you the snapshot of the demographic transition. Now, how the demographic transition kind of things. So this demographic transition, before Second World War and now till today, they have divided whole period into the 4 major stages. The stage 1, pre-modern. Now, pre-modern stages, we have higher the birth rate, higher the death rate, in spite of everywhere in developing countries and developed countries, both there. So what next? So the growth is either 0 or a moderate. And then the second stage, then they say this is a stage when industrialization, moderation. Now this second stage especially emerges after the Second World War, and then stage 3 and all. Now this is the more refinement. Here the stage 1, when the death rate declined very rapid, very fast, and the mortality still, the fertility was still fluctuating. It was not, because the fertility, there is individual decisions, so the behavioral kind of things, and always when I have a discussion with Dr. Gupta, my mentor, he always say, the most difficult person in this world is a human. It is very difficult to predict their behavior. You never know what they say and what they do. It's very difficult. So any model, anything. So that's why when we talk about the fertility, it was very difficult. It was fluctuating. But when they realized that reducing fertility is advantage, and it is horseman effect also. Some people have less children, some people have more, but they are doing better, especially. And then they learn from the developed countries. Then it was go. So this is the 4 stages. The second stage, and then the third stage. The second stage is the second after the post-World War situation, when most of the countries which were under the colonial rule, they all got independence. So they borrowed the medicine, they borrowed the technology, able to bring down the fertility rate. This is the period we call it baby boom period. This is the period when we call the marriage boom. There's no war, nothing. People are marrying, having a lot of children and all. And then earlier the women used to produce 7 children, and then she knows even you ask her to produce 5, she will not, because she was not sure how many of them will survive. Then the children are also going to survive. So now she decided, no, I should not. And then the decision depends on the family and her mother-in-law and all. They're all convinced. So second stage. So most of the developed countries, they are in the last stage or the fourth stage, and most of the South Asian countries. Now, where the where India is in the mid third or the late third, and where they are, and then some Central Asian countries, they are in the last second stage 2 or the first early stage 2. So where still the birth rate. And now here what happened in the country where, especially the China is reached to the stage 4, and some of the state on last stage 3. Because of the population inertia, still even they reduce the fertility, but still the population is growing. So why demographic? So the first stage one, when we talk about, that is a shift from high rate of birth and death to low rate of birth and death. Now, if you see the stage same, here also the contribution in the stage 1 or the early stage 2 is not high, because high birth is high rated. And in the last 3 stage, and early 4 stage, also the contribution. But what is the difference? This is shifting, paradigm shift from high birth and death to low birth and death. Now, low birth and death has some disadvantage. I'm going to speak also. Now, this one I covered. Yeah, I covered. Now, if you see, I mentioned that most of the European countries and Western countries, they have achieved their replacement level of low birth and low death. And then developing countries, some of the developing countries in the very few African and sub-Saharan countries in the last second stage, and most of the developing countries and the South Asian countries in the third phase. This is the that's fine. Yeah, I've explained. Now, I'm going to introduce one concept. That's why I bring this here. Most of the people, you know that. When I say the structure, so what I'm doing, I'm trying to study here the population at different age group along with the sex. So this is called composition, age structure. Now, what happened here? Now, if you see this Kerala 2001, Kerala 1991, and then 2001, if you see the 0 to 4 population, this is a 0 to 4 population, the proportion is lesser than the population in 20 to 24. It means what happened? How do I explain? Suppose if I have to explain the population of women or men who are in age today 20 to 24, how do I explain? In demography, we explain the proportion, the population in age 20 to 24 is what? They are nothing but the survivor of birth took place 20 years before. This is how we explain. Now, what is 0 to 4? The 0 to 4, they're the survivor, those births take place during that period. So, if their birth is worse, it means that shows the declining fertility. So, the fertility decline is taking place in Kerala, which is much fast, and then it is in MP everywhere. Now, another interesting part, when we see the proportion of young population, proportion of old population, and then we see the proportion of population between working age, that is 19 to 59, and if overall growth. So this concept I wanted to introduce, that's why we. Now, so here's the concept of demographic window of opportunity. It is very important for you to understand. Very loosely people use the word demographic dividend, demographic window of opportunity, but it's very important for you to understand what is the meaning of it. When we say demographic window of opportunity, so we are talking about window of opportunity, that is a time duration when the growth of total population of any country is found to be lower than the working population growth rate. So this is the exact period. So longer that you remain in the stage, you will be in advantage position. You will be in advantage position. Now you need to convert that advantageous position into the dividend and bonus. Meaning what? Meaning is this, that whatever working proportion you have, everybody should have employment. If they do not have employment, if they do not have a required skill, then nobody will employ. So it means you are not able to get the advantage of demographic window of opportunity. The dividend you're not getting, the bonus you're not getting. And then I can, by Dr. Surani understanding, he does it quite often, this, the gross domestic product, the gross domestic, so total domestic product divided by total population. And if I bifurcate the total population in three categories, the proportion in working age group, real labor force in the market, and then dependency. So what happened? The countries where the unemployment rate is very high or underemployment, they're able to employ, but they're unemployment, then you cannot get an advantage of the dividend. So when the fertility declines, then the stage comes for every country that the working population proportion is higher than the dependency. So dependency of the younger age and the dependency of age. This is what the our Honorable Prime Minister Modi used to say. We have to convert this dividend. We have to convert demographic bonus. We are not able to. Now, this is another example I can tell you. Here I try to the dependent and working age. So if you see the working age, which is explained here by the green line, you see the green line by 2020, and then so we were in advantage position and we will remain in advantage position, green line. And then the dependency always. But if you do not convert this that I showed you, now I have done little bit exercise. This exercise I used to do in the class with the student also. And so I'm trying to show you, if you see the example of Andhra. Now Andhra during 1991 and 2001, I can use it 2011 also, but unfortunately I did not get the migration data, so I couldn't use it. So here if you see, the Andhra growth rate was 1.4 between 1991 to 2000. And what is the growth rate of working population? 1.9. Meaning the growth rate of population between 19 to 59 grow faster than the total population. So this is the advantages, demographic bonus advantage to Andhra by 0.5. Now the growth rate of workers, the growth rate of worker means what? Growth rate of worker means we have a lot many youth in that age group, but we were not able to provide them work. So only 1.7 growth. So it means the demographic bonus, actually the real term we got only 0.3 and we would have got it 0.5. So we are losing. So there is a potential still in Andhra's workforce, 0.2% we are not able to. This is what the concept I want to give you. So there is a two very important concept. First, every country has to prolong the demographic window of opportunity. Now, how you can prolong? You can prolong only when you remain in late 3. Don't shift from very low fertility to low death rate. This is what the China is doing. Just coercive measure, only one child. The one child is not going to help. See, one child, you marry, so you have one child, and then you have a parent of your, because longevity has gone up, so you have a parent of wife, you have a parent of yourself. So the 4 people and 5 and 2 people are working. So it is not a good. So what is the goal? The good is you remain. So longer you remain. And India is a very peculiar country, because India, if you see India, I showed you in the beginning, India has many countries involved. If you see the 1.5 compare 1.2 billion versus 7 billion. So we have many countries inside India. So even a few states like the southern state, Kerala, they follow the western part, doesn't matter, but Himachal Pradesh model is there. But UP, Bihar, they will still keep on young. They will keep on providing forces. This is what's happening. So the labor force is the unskilled, much unskilled, unorganized sector. This labor goes to this pair to work. So when the situation of like pandemic occurs, then there is a chaos, and there is and this has a direct link with the GDP. So our GDP and everything gets affected. So we need to work on that. This is what the Honorable Prime Minister used to say. Another term is used in demographic transition, reverse of demographic transition. This is what peculiarly observed in sub-Saharan countries. Now, reverse of demographic transition means what? That because of pandemic, because of HIV/AIDS, the longevity has gone down. Zimbabwe, the longevity has gone down to 33.1%. So what happened? This country in this demographic transition cycle, they just withdrawn back. They were in somewhere in the second mid stage of the, but they were withdrawn. They again went higher death and higher. Even the death rate was higher than the fertility. So even the actually. So you can also observe the reverse of demographic transition. This is what some example we have. Now I will use the population issues and paradox. It is very important. Now, that's why the demographic knowledge generally we use, and the demographers are really, they feel very happy when they play with the data, when they churn with the data. If they don't play with the data, they don't churn the data, they don't feel comfortable. This is what all exactly happens with me. Now, so we use this information to express, to present the inequality situation, the equity situation with respect to socio-economic, and because I come from the public health background, so reproductive health status. This is one you see that table I have used from the UNICEF presentation. So if you see the income use, the Goa have this much of GDP and then per capita income. So use equity. Poverty also. The poverty in Delhi 13.1, and whereas in Orissa half of the population poor. Now when we see the inequality, female labor force, it varies. Same country. In Himachal, 48% in Delhi, which is our country of the country, is only 8%. Now literacy also so huge. In Kerala, 94, almost literate, whereas in Bihar, still 64%. Child sex ratio, this is a big deal. In Mizoram, 1971, in Haryana, sex ratio at birth, this is a big issue. And you all know that why the people they do not born, and especially the sex ratio at birth is a very important, with the China is facing when you reduce the fertility. So the country, the population where the declining fertility from 2 onwards, then the sex ratio at birth has a very important role, especially in development sector, and it affects many things, social welfare program. And then migration, of course, in Kerala is out migration. Most of the people go out. So they are left with only the old people. That's why many primary schools converted to old. There were different problems. And then Kerala also facing the different health transition because of the epidemiological change, emergence, new re-emergence of especially the vector-borne disease have come up with that. So a lot of data is reported there. Urbanization, I told you. Oh, urbanization, if you see the 2011, 1 and 11 situation, in the country, if we remember urbanization, we see the absolute increase in urbanization found to be more than the rural. And this is all matter. So of course, our urbanization, if outside the country will not, but within a country, no, it plays an important role for our development. So it's a big challenge. So this is what the total fertility, there are huge variation, and that's what the beauty of India, that we have a diversity in unity still, but we have a lot of variation. And then the teenage fertility in Goa 25 and Bihar 120. But so here we say the paradox, but I see this Bihar is going to produce for another 20 years the contribution in the workforce. So there is another way of argument we have to see. But only thing is you train this workforce skill, proper skill, and then full quality education, everything, and they give them training of employability. And being in a public health sector, we are in an advantage service sector that we really have we require a lot of young forces in a public health to provide services all over the world, not only in India. The contraceptive, a lot of variation, unmet need of family planning, it varies from 5%, 35%. Skilled birth attendance, a lot of these products, a lot of variation is there. Now, this is another very important concept. 2005 and 2025. This is just I have used from UNICEF, from the McKinsey report, that if you see the proportion of poor is not going to be the way it is being the development program taking place. The proportion of poor is going to be increased. So if you see the proportion of poor, which is in the range of aspire and deprived people around 100%, which has gone up 150%. So this is what some concern. So we have to really uh, uh, treat our workforce, young force, in a very, very intellectual manner. Very, otherwise we will miss that opportunity. And then health issues, Dr. Sudani always, present in his presentation, that coverage issues, accessibility issues, quality. The quality first time, I learned quality from Dr. Gupta. He was the master. He always said that, Dhirendra, you are a point demographer, but I tell you how to measure the qualitative, and he showed us when we did a project. So you can measure in the qualitative indicator, quality. Only thing is if you define what are the proper indicators and what are the SOP for you, and then what are the domain, what is the attribute of what people you can measure, and we do it. So quality is a big issue. And then train manpower, and of course the strategy and approach. This is just one of the study which I have used it. So just to see a lot of scope for public health people. We should be very highly motivated. That still in India, 20% of people reported that they have to travel over 5 kilometers to get a treatment, especially for the OPD. And urban area 8%, rural 32%, and then 70% is affordable, and 21 still those who are poor is not affordable. So we have to do a lot in public health sector. And this is what the situation is. Nothing new, all knows. But if you see that what is happening in these health institutions, if Bihar, we found that people, they were absent from their from the position when they went there, the post, they were not there, and 18% they could not give any reason why they were absent, and the most 35% they say is the official duty. I don't know what official duty, sometimes court duty. That is the kind of scenario we have. And this is, I think, my the last slide. So another thing, this is a very that what are the key reasons cited by for achieving treatment, especially and all India level. Why people go in private sector? They say in government facilities, no free treatment. Another thing they say, the waiting time is another. And then private sector, they immediately get a doctor. Even some, I don't know why, there's some people in government sector, they say it's can't affordable, probably the medicinal availability is there. And then lack of specialists, especially in referral units. And another important thing, so this bifurcation, you can see that, so a lot of scope. This is the area where we need to really work, and as a public health specialist, and then work how we can improve the situation. So I think that was the last. So I used a lot of information from census, some by IIHMR document, and some of the NAT from UNFPA, WHO, the Government of India, and then MOSP, CRO, and all. Thank you very much. I think whatever time given. So thank you very much.